6 years ago, a single mom who had been newly single at the time had a house fire and lost everything. Not even a month after she had converted her second bedroom in her home into a playroom for her kids, had stocked the pantry, and had made sure that this small space could work to sustain her and her two children, ages 3 and 6 at the time. This mother persevered. She ended up having to take her ex back after he had already cheated on her and gotten another woman pregnant. She took him back because she still had loved him deeply, and she didn't really want to separate the family. She took him back out of survival. At the time, he had been sharing a house with 2 other single dads. He had a bedroom and a shared living space and a shared kitchen space. He only had the bedroom to offer his partner and the children. The mother persevered. In that time, she was able to find a place to live. She was able to get out of that space after 3 weeks of hell. But in those 3 weeks, that mother managed to connect with a group of women who were doing extraordinary things and would launch her to her next level only a year later. This extraordinary group of women nurtured this mother. They were amazed at her resilience. They were amazed that even though she had just had her house burned down, she still attended the conference call to better herself and to learn what she needed to know to get her business off the ground. Because as she had looked at her house burning up in flames, as she knew that there was a possibility she would have lost everything, including everything on her computer, of the business that she had been building a concept of over the last 6 years, the business that she had had in her heart, the dream of empowering moms. She knew she would rebuild. And she did. A year later, this same resilient mom had managed to climb a little bit out of poverty. She was in a new basement suite, and her partner was back with her. They had a 2-bedroom basement suite where you couldn't even close the door properly. And to lock it and keep it closed required you to deadbolt it. It was not a legal suite. She was sharing laundry with upstairs, and she was only allowed 2 days to do the laundry, which meant that laundry piled up and overwhelmed this mother. The space was small. It was cramped. It was crowded with 4 people living there. But it was close to her son's school, and she had worked tirelessly to get him into the school that she knew he would best thrive in. It was an arts school, and they applied the arts to other areas of education. She knew that her son would have his best chance in this school. After all, it was one of those choice schools where more affluent families and other connections would be present. Though this school did have those connections, and though this school was a choice school, the environment was not that great. In fact, the school was across the street from a hotel and a liquor store. Oftentimes, when this mother would walk her kids to school, she would recognize that she needed to steer them away from the closer side of the sidewalk to the grass because there were needles strewn around. She dreamed of a better life for her children, and she also knew that sometimes we have to live in conditions that are not ideal and still manage to thrive. And this mother was thriving in this space because she had found a community different from the birth community where she had been thriving, where the group of women had told her, "You are one of us. And you are a coach. You're not just a childbirth educator, you're a coach. And they had told her to write her book. By the time the year had finished and she was approaching that anniversary of the house fire on November 11th, this mother had already written the first draft of her book. She had a concept for a course that has now been redone and turned into a challenge that she now has on her YouTube channel. Back in 2020, 5 years ago, this mother, with her perseverance, had a dream. She had a dream to have a book. She had a dream to have courses. She had no concept of how to create an online business, but she was willing to learn. The world had shut down in this time. She watched as mothers who had had stable jobs and mothers who had been working from home were given the pink slip, recognizing that just because you have a job doesn't guarantee that you will always have a job, recognizing the ways that the system was not serving mothers, recognizing the ways the system wanted to serve mothers but couldn't, and recognizing that it is going to take all of us being interdependent, not codependent on a system or one avenue of income stream, but to become sovereign. This mother recognized the importance of independence and the importance of relying on others and calling in that support as needed. And this mother built a system she now calls her 5 pillars. Fast forward, in this new community, this mother also thrived. She understood the games that were being played and how people had been tricked out of their hard-earned money. And this community did not do that. This community, she recognized, had the resources that she truly needed. They had the right facilitators. They had the right support for her. They had the right environment where she could learn more about what she needed. She had rich soil and she planted seeds. The seeds blossomed. This mother continued to thrive. She recognized that her relationship with her partner was not actually serving her and that she deserved better than what she had. She persevered and she chose to walk away from that relationship that she had clung so desperately to, that she had started to abandon herself, because the dream of empowering moms was now starting to gain traction. She was getting recognized, not just from her new community, but also from other moms. One mom in particular is featured inside of her book. And of course, that mom became a stand for everything that she had wanted to embody. And so, as the seeds continued to plant, and as the soil continued to flourish, and as she continued to tend to the garden that she was cultivating, she recognized the impact. But gardens take a while to grow. And it takes a while sometimes for fruits to be able to nourish enough people and to be able to sustain someone on their own. And so this mother also utilized the help of others. She utilized the help of other systems. And to the outside world, it looked like she was leeching off the system and not doing anything and not getting a job. This mother chose to go into a 1-bedroom basement suite, even though she had 2 children, a boy and a girl. They shared this bedroom for 3 years, until the point when the boy needed his own space. And so the mother converted her living room into a bedroom over the summer for her boy. At the same time that she had decided to convert this space and change her background so that she could still do what she wanted to do and make a beautiful background, in fact, this very background as it is, other things started to fall apart. The fridge that had kept the food cold was no longer keeping the food cold after only 4 years. In fact, by the end of June, the fridge was only keeping the food cold for about 2 to 3 days, and then things would start to spoil. So she bought less. She recognized the limitations of the fridge. She attempted to get the fridge replaced. It wasn't going to work. She started to buy less of the cold food and sustain herself on the abundance that had been provided by the school systems that her children were in. Learning how to survive on preserves, learning how to survive on less of the foods that used to be needing to be kept cold, she bought less of them and pivoted. In that time, at the end of June, the stove sparked. This mother was not going to take any chances. After all, the reason for the house fire had happened because the furnace had caught fire previously and had been put out, and she'd been told to just change the filter. She was not going to take any chances, and she said, no, the fridge and the stove both need to be replaced. There were limitations with the landlord. Unfortunately, sometimes property owners do not have the funds to be able to take care of things that need to be taken care of. And the mother understood this. She understood the capacity. She's like, it's not coming from here. I will do without. Her ex-husband gave her a hot plate to use. It could plug in, and it was safe to use because it was basically a makeshift stove. He had used it multiple times, and she had learned from him previously that sometimes you can't rely on advanced technology, and you need to also know how to use the baser levels of how to sustain life and how to sustain yourself. While the hot plate wasn't ideal, and it took 10 times longer to cook Kraft dinner than it had ever taken before, and though she was also frustrated with this hot plate, it was at least allowing her to cook food for her kids, and so she utilized that hot plate. In September, the fridge died, but the freezer was still working. And so she pivoted again, and she decided that she was going to have the freezer as the main source for the cold foods. But then a week later, the freezer died. You would think that this mother would have fallen apart, but no. As all of this was going on over the summer, as she was facing all of these challenges, she started writing a book that is still in progress, a book that's going to be a hell of a book once it's finished, with a hell of a story to go with it. A book that showcases the 5 pillars. The 5 pillars are the right mindset, the right education, the right environment, the right facilitators, and the right support. That doesn't mean perfect. Sometimes we get less than we would like to have. We can still thrive. Sometimes we don't get things quite right. Sometimes we wish we had more. We can still thrive. And sometimes we get everything just right, and we can thrive, and we can bring that abundance out to the world. And in those times when we have abundance to give, we need to recognize that there are people out there who have far less, and they are stretched to capacity, and they need to be able to say, I need help, and feel no shame asking for that help, and not have guilt that they are asking for that help, and not have society tell them that they're not doing enough. This mother had asked for help. This mother had recognized her own capacity, and she had started to ask for help after being very hyper-independent. She'd grown up with a single dad who had shown her resilience, and he had raised her to be strong. And so she knew not to ask for help unless she truly needed it. But when she asked for help, people still said, "But you're so strong, you can figure it out." And yes, she could have. However, she was stretched then. And when this mother finally asked for help, she was past her breaking point. But the thing is that even though we sometimes think that we can carry it all ourselves, and we've been told that we're super mom, the fact is that we do deserve to ask for help and we do deserve more support. And yes, sometimes utilizing the system and the charity of others is a good thing. When the house burned, everyone rallied to my aid. Everyone wanted to help when my house burned. I told them what I needed. And sometimes I got more of things that I didn't need. I had more clothes than I knew what to do with. In the end, I gave a lot of those clothes back out with the caveat that anyone who came to get them needed to take all of the bags. And there were a lot of bags. They were to take what they needed, and then they were to pay it forward. I didn't want to see them trying to charge money for it. I wanted it paid forward. If we all started thinking about one person's trash is another person's treasure, and one person's clutter is something somebody needs, and we started paying it forward, imagine how much more abundant we could be. If we started recognizing people's capacity to give and people's capacity to hold things, but we also recognize that even those who look like they've made it or look like they've got this handled could use some extra support. And those who've made it or have shown in the past how strong they are, we're not ashamed to ask for that support. Imagine how much better our world would be. 6 years ago, I was a victim of a circumstance beyond my control. My house literally burned up on me after I had spent all of that time creating what I had felt was the right environment to thrive in as I built my business. My computer was completely melted. I only had what I'd saved on my cloud. I didn't have any of my hard drives. I had to build Empowering Moms from the ground up again. It's like in Think and Grow Rich, when they talk about the shop that had basically been burned to the ground, like the fire in Chicago, and all of the businesses went up in smoke, but some of them stayed and rebuilt. When something goes up in flames, literally or figuratively, are you going to rebuild? Again, it's like Monty Python. I wanted a castle on a swamp. People said I was crazy to have the castle on the swamp. The first castle sunk into the swamp, but I built another castle, and that one also sunk into the swamp. And then the third one burned down and then fell into the swamp. But then I finally had another castle, and it was sustained on the other foundations. The reason that castle stood was likely because it was built on top of all of the other castles that had sunk into the swamp. You need to recognize that sometimes success looks a lot like struggling to the outside world or not making it to the outside world. But let me just tell you what I've done in this tiny little basement suite where my kids have been sharing a bedroom for 3 years, and then my son is now sleeping in the living room, and his space is pretty cool, actually. He took what I had initially given him, I gave him the space, and he did start decorating it and making it his own. I'm so immensely proud of my son for how he transformed his own space. When he showed me what he'd done while I was in the bedroom fixing up my space, I was so proud of him. He knows how to make it work. My daughter has cultivated her space too. She knows how to make a small space work for her. Those lessons that my children have learned are going to sustain them long term, even when we have more abundance and when they have big rooms all to themselves. They are going to remember this because I told them, as I gave them a piece of pizza each, on a day when I was able to get pizza for them, because I had a little bit of extra money, and I told them, I said, I want you to remember this. I want you to remember the times that we've struggled so that you grow up to understand when you have more to give, where to direct it to. When I have more abundance, when I have possibly a real estate portfolio to choose from, I'm going to be looking for the mothers who know how to make it work and know how to build. Because I have built on less. I have not been living in a giant palace with all the resources. I am resourceful. My book is sitting behind me. The book that I started writing back in 2020 sits on my shelf. I routinely get extra copies, author's copies. I order them and I give them out whenever I'm on a trip or when I'm just out and about. I give this book out. I have mapped my 5-pillar system for more than just birth. It applies to business. It applies to mental health. It applies to personal development. It applies to any creative project. You need the right mindset, the right education, the right environment, the right facilitators, and the right support. I was gifted so many supports. The right facilitators lifted me up. They trained me. They didn't have to, and they did because they saw my potential and they knew what the return of investment would be on getting me where I needed to be. I myself am a right facilitator. I don't take on everyone who comes to me and wants to work with me because I'm looking for those people who truly understand the principles of true success and abundance and generosity, and who are not going to look down on someone who has next to nothing, but instead elevate them in their own communities. The ripple effect. A drop in the ocean creates ripples. Many ripples create waves. Enough waves can change the tide. I'm still building empowering moms in other directions. The foundation is already solid. Yesterday, just spontaneously, I created a 5-day mini challenge. I spoke confidently on camera, and that mini challenge has already been scheduled to run on YouTube. A few weeks ago, I hit a snag. People didn't quite understand what an influencer mom does, and they didn't quite understand what I was doing with my polarized video. Go check out my ecosystem videos to understand that further. And maybe also Carly Bondard Uncensored, other videos, The Art of Pissing People Off. I understand how to go viral. I understand how to get a message across. And that wasn't on my own. I had some amazing people who taught me how to speak confidently on camera, how to strategize and get a message to land where it needs to land, to create calls to action, to create a program, to write a book and have it be comprehensive, to take my jumble of ideas and put them in frameworks. Carly Bondard Uncensored is my freestyle. I also have self-study programs. I know how to take my freestyle teachings and put them into a concrete program. I know how to coach. I gained those skills. I took the basement suite and I passed up something else that came in at the same time. 2 days after I had already started moving into my basement suite and decorating it, I received a phone call from one of the systems that I had reached out for help for. They did have a 3-bedroom place, but it was in a different neighborhood with a different school system that was going to be further away from the supports that I needed. It was not across the street from the school. And so I passed up on it. I said, somebody else needs that more. I am okay where I am. I have a dishwasher. I have washer and dryer already in the unit, and it's across the street from a very good school. I will take what I have. I don't need 3 bedrooms. Sure, to the outside world, people would say I needed 3 bedrooms, but I knew I didn't need 3 bedrooms. My kids had co-slept with me pretty much all of their lives. They were used to sleeping in the same room as mommy. That wasn't an issue for them. Someone else needed that more. Someone who maybe needed more space. Maybe even a family that needed 3 bedrooms because they had more family members than I had, and they were going to make that space work. I don't know. All I know is that when I know what I have is enough, I am content. And when I need more, I call it in. And I trust that more will always come when I need it most. I'd also been offered a chance to go through the accelerator program, Virtual Coach Accelerator. Back in 2022, in April, I had received the message. They asked me, why aren't you in our higher level program yet? And I said, honestly, I wouldn't be able to afford it where I am right now. It is on my list of things I want to do, but I wouldn't be able to afford it. And not only that, this isn't the right time for me. I really need to focus on building right now. And in the fall, around the same time in November of 2022, I was granted access to that program because my perseverance had impressed my mentors. When you have that ripple effect, when you recognize what people can actually have capacity for, when you recognize their true potential, when you recognize a return on investment, it becomes easy to create scholarships. And there were scholarships within this program, and I knew about it because I'd seen another single mother being granted the scholarship to better her life. Imagine if we were all like that. That's the essence of empowering moms. That's what I'm building. I am a masterful interviewer. I like to showcase stories of resilience and strength. I like to showcase stories where people are shining their light in the world. And I do cross-promote. In addition to that, I coach. I love to coach those who really do want to make an impact in the world. I want to refine their messages, and my ecosystem allows for true altruism while still protecting energy and keeping the integrity of the programs. Yes, you can do scholarships, but please charge what you're worth. You deserve it. You deserve your abundance. I know you want to help everyone. And charge what you're worth. Information is free. I only charge for access to me. And I have raised my rates. I am unapologetic in how much I charge, and I will be unapologetic in the future to how much more I charge. But there will always be other layers of empowering moms where people can elevate themselves. My only thing is that no matter where you're at, you need to show me you can do the work. That's in all areas of life. Whether it's in parenting, whether it's you need to build a business, show me you can do the work. And I will give you 10 times back what you invest, because you will be able to create that for yourself. I don't know where I'm headed next. I don't know when all of my dreams are coming true. I do know I've planted a lot of seeds. I've watered seeds. I've cultivated gardens, and the flowers are blooming. The fruits will come soon. I've already taken some of my fruits and I've picked them off the vine and I've handed them to people. And whether they recognize that they can eat that fruit and harvest the seeds and pass it out, or tell others about the rich garden that has the fruit in the first place, that's up to them. But I believe in the goodness of people. I believe that we all have the capacity to do really good things in this world, regardless of what's going on, regardless of the fear. I have the map for fear, by the way. I have the map for thriving, even in not ideal conditions. Even if somebody calls you crazy for believing or doing something that is unconventional, I have the map. I believe in truth and authenticity. And I believe that we all need to have an open heart. And we need to have gratitude and resilience and tenacity. We need to understand the traumas of others and be trauma informed. We need to be conscious as we create. And we can have a lot of fun with it. Sometimes it's fun to play in the shadows. I've had a lot of fun there. I also have a lot of fun in the light. I walk the line of the shadows and the light. I'm a Scorpio. It's kind of in my nature. And I can teach you. I'll have to charge, but I teach you. And before I charge to learn from me, I usually do put out little videos. I drop the seeds. Then I refine the programs after I've coached. But I coach first. I drop the seeds, I coach. I see the results, I watch other people's challenges, and then I hone my message. My 4 sources of fear recently helped someone inside of the hospital where I had been taken to. And I watched my pillars work in a different way. I watched how the system that is so stretched to capacity was benefited by my being there. Sometimes even one of the most unexpected WTF moments that happens is actually happening for you if you have the right mindset about it. And I had the right mindset. I saw the opportunity, even where I was, to do good. And I did. And when I was released, I left them with my 10K program on the categories of fear and the 5 pillars. They have it. Whether they choose to use it and recognize the gift I gave that hospital, I don't know. But I did tell them that I am open to consults. I am always open as a consultant. I will charge you, of course, for my time. And the price may be steep, depending on what you want from me. And at the same time, I am open. And there's always another path if the one that I'm charging isn't going to work for you. And if you can show me you can do the work, we might be able to find a different exchange. After all, I got into virtual coach by being a student who was also a volunteer. And I was teaching and running a class for another dear friend of mine who wanted to be able to spend the summer with his kids. And I took on that extra work, and I worked very hard inside of that program. Just because I was given it for free didn't mean that I wasn't going to value it, because I already did. And I made friends and I made connections. And when I had the money to jump back in, I paid that money. And then I jumped into a mastermind on top of it that I exchanged my time and energy again to be able to learn from a dear friend of mine, the master. You may have already heard his name many times, Donald Stojak. He taught me a lot. There were others who I'll keep quiet for a little bit, but I think you can kind of figure it out if you're close enough to me. And those who don't yet know, I've dropped hints, but all will be revealed in time. The story's not over. And I like to keep my readers on the edge of their seats. I like to drop hints that those who follow all of the clues can start to piece together where the story might be headed. And I like to drop little cliffhangers. And I like to weave extra stories within my stories. After all, I have always been a master storyteller ever since I was a little girl. And even in my coaching, I tell my stories. And even in this book I'm writing, No More Mommy Martyr, The Path to Sovereign Motherhood, I tell my stories. And Carly Bondred Uncensored is where I tell my stories. And my social media is where I tell my stories. It's a story. If you want more pieces to the story, well, the source is the author. It's not what other people say about the story, it's the author. What is the author's intention? But then you can also make meaning of the story. Take what resonates and leave the rest. And sometimes, if you come back to a story after a while with more information and more knowledge, you might get something else that you didn't see before. I like to read my stories 3 times. First, to get the overview, then to get the aha moments, and finally, to be able to get the rest of the pieces, the building blocks, so that I can create from that story. Women Who Run with the Wolves is one of my favorite stories. It's actually a collection of stories. It's an anthology of stories and deep wisdom. And I find something new every time. I love books. I've always loved books. And I had a dream as a little girl that one day I would be a powerful author. And I didn't recognize back then that I would do it through birth. But even as a little girl, I had wanted to be a mom. And I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And I wanted to also be famous. And I wanted to be able to speak on camera. And I wanted to be out there in the world doing good. I love fairy tales. I love Cinderella. Because Cinderella was nice to the mice and the birds. And even when she was shut up in her attic, she still had beautiful dreams. And the mice and the birds helped her. They were just little mice and birds, and they put together a dress. And when that dress was ripped apart by her stepsisters and her stepmother, Cinderella persevered, and her fairy godmother came in. And she said, I'll let you go to the ball. And she transformed Cinderella's rags into a beautiful ball gown and gave her glass slippers on her feet and turned her pumpkin into a coach and turned the mice into horses, her dog into a footman, and the other horse into the coachman. And Cinderella went to the ball and she danced with the prince. And the prince found her through the shoe that only ever fit her foot. And Cinderella became the queen of a land where they would definitely need to have someone who knew what it was like to be shut up in an attic so that no other little girls would suffer that. If Cinderella was around in modern times, or if I was Cinderella, I would have created something for orphaned girls who had wicked stepmothers. But I would also recognize that maybe the wicked stepmother was the way she was because of her circumstances. After all, the live action version of Cinderella with Richard Madden and Lily James and Kate Blanchett shows a different kind of story of why the stepmother was the way she was. Women are often painted as the villain or the victim. I believe that actually we can be both. It depends on who's telling the story. And sometimes we can be both at the same time. It depends on who's telling the story. It always depends on who's telling the story, how well they tell it, and what else they see, and who their listeners are. I tell stories. That's what I do. If you want to go deeper with me, the deeper you go with me, the more treasures you'll uncover. But what you need to understand is that I'm always going to come from a place of love, even if I look like a villain to somebody else. So that's the message. I don't know what's coming next. I know what I would like. And they know what I would like. My birthday is next week. And what I've done in 5 years is incredible. In 6 years from when my house burned down, I never imagined I'd be here. And I'd love to see what's coming next. After all, no matter how your heart is grieving, if you keep on believing, the dream that you wish will come true. I have fairy godmothers. I have little mice and birds that help me. When I need it most, they surprise me. I am Cinderella. I'm also a queen ruling her kingdom. And it's just going to get better from here. Even if my fridge stops working, my stove stops working, I will find a way to weave that into a story and turn darkness into light. So I love you, and I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful rest of the year. And I will see you soon. Namaste.